ladies and gentlemen, and welcome here to the 9th race of the 4th season of the Dark Horse Racing Series as we are getting set to race under the lights at the Auto Club Speedway. Here tonight, 120 circuits await these drivers as only 8 races into the season, and we've been treated to some unbelievable finishes. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Scott Rankin. And Scott, so far this year, 2 drivers have gone to victory lane multiple times, but we've had a total of 6 different drivers find victory lane. Here tonight's the second time they're going to take to a 2-mile speedway / super speedway. Of course, we had Michigan as the season openers, so is there anything we can glean from that Michigan race to what could happen here tonight?
As always, yeah, 100%. There's 2 different styles of races, and I was talking to a few of the drivers pre-show and whatnot. A few of them were a little bit upset that tonight's race is 20 laps longer than the one we had at Michigan. But you know what? If you're going to have Michigan, you're going to have Auto Club in the same season, creating a slightly different race by changing the number of laps, potentially changing the level of fuel, all that, I actually think that's a really, really good idea. It nets you the potential for a stronger race, a different kind of race. We saw how important fuel was in that first race. Fuel is so much less important tonight with the extra 20 laps. So we can glean a fair amount dating back to our season opener at Michigan, but at the same time, the pace is going to come up a long, long way. So I think we're set for probably what is going to be one of the most interesting races on the calendar.
About 18, 19 drivers that are scheduled to take the green flag here tonight. As you can see on the top of your screen, only 7 have taken time up to this point, with still about 4 minutes left in this qualifying session. Pulling out onto the racetrack right now, you see the defending winner of this race. Now, Auto Club, the past 2 seasons, has been the season opener, but Michigan ended up taking that spot this season. Auto Club moves a little bit further down on the schedule, but Matt Wagner, the defending winner of this race, and we talked with him last week after his top 3 run at Pocono, Scott. He says, I come into Auto Club prepared to win this race. It's my turf.
Yeah, look at the guy. He's confident, right? He's just grabbed another podium. He hasn't been consistently on the podium thus far this season, but you can tell that his confidence is building. And you look at the competition that's around him. I actually don't think he is the strongest driver tonight, which is really, really weird. Because normally when a driver comes down and they say, "Hey, look, I'm the strongest guy. This is my turf." It's a go-to, right? He's the go-to. I honestly believe Rick Ravon is the car to beat again. Look at the run that guy is on. Look at how successful he's been over the last few weeks. Look at how unsuccessful Robert Maleska has been as of late as well. This guy's the defending champion. He had a phenomenal season opening, and we just all of a sudden just went, "Oh, Maleska's got this covered again. He's going to lead this thing from the front. It's his to lose." No, it's not. Not in any stretch of the imagination. And how interesting a concept is that? It blows my mind, basically.
Rick Ravon, obviously, as we mentioned, the entirety of this first half of the schedule has been, without a doubt, one of the most consistent drivers. Last week at Pocono, started dead last and was able to pick up his first victory on the season. Subsequently, your points leader coming into this race. You talk about Maleska dropping another spot last week down to 4th in points, and just now taking to the track, you've got Nick DeGroot in the 89, second in the points, 28 points out, and one of the 2 multi-time winners this season, 2-time winner Henry Bennett, is now getting ready to put down his first time lap. He's 3rd in the points, 48 points back. If you look at it here, only 8 races in, there's 6 drivers that are separated by less than 75 points, so it's still really close, and we know that the action here tonight is going to be close with pack racing.
That's it. It's not just pack racing, it's multi-wide, multi-groove racing. It's the benefit of Auto Club in Michigan. That's their real strength as racing circuits, is that they really provide phenomenal multi-wide, multi-groove racing. It's awesome to see, and it's part of the reason that I actually really like both of these tracks. They're probably my strongest tracks on the schedule as well. So, look, it's an interesting concept tonight, particularly the multi-groove style of racing, coming to a race where the season itself is this close. Honestly, we are set up for such a phenomenal race, and it's such a crucial phase of the series as well. A lot of these drivers have got to get their seasons back on track and start their hunt down towards the tail end of the season. Maleska in particular, remember, he won that season opener back at Michigan too.
Looking at Rick Ravon, who right now is 8th on the board. Maleska the third about to come around to complete his first lap. And most of these drivers that you would expect to see up at the top of the board, you might see them down near the bottom, at least for the first lap, because you saw with Rick Ravon, with Maleska, I think DeGroot did the same thing, as well as Matt Wagner. They kind of crept around on their warm-up lap. I'm assuming that's to make sure that those tires didn't wear down.
Assume so. They want to put some sort of heat, some sort of energy in the tires before they get out there, and they really give it their all. So that would be my assumption. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, the drivers are smarter than us. That's certainly for sure. Look, I mean, yeah, the pace is definitely coming up for a lot of these guys in the second lap. Qualifying results are getting closer. Maleska's gone to pole. Ravon is, what's that, 700ths of a second off of the pole time.
And very close there for Eric Peterson to capture his first pole. 35 1,000ths off the lap that Maleska just put down. He put that down with about 30 seconds remaining. And subsequently, he's going to capture his 6th pole on the season. So far this year, of those 5 poles, 3 times he's ended up in victory lane. We'll see if he's going to be able to maybe find his 4th victory on the season. Auto Club is a track, though, here under the Dark Horse banner that he is yet to win at.
Yeah, so again, there's a lot of different bits and pieces, a lot of moving parts that these guys and questions that these guys are going to answer tonight. And ultimately, like I said, the pack racing here is so good. It's one of the best tracks on the calendar to create awesome racing scenarios, and you never quite at any stage think that you've got the race won. So, look, I mean, the last time out, we saw Maleska take the pole. He led maybe the first lap, and after that, he settled back into the back end of that lead bunch, and he was happy to just sit there and let them punch the hole, and that was his ticket to victory lane, was that he saved enough fuel. Tonight, the fuel scenario is a fair bit different, and like I said, I actually expect that pace to come up a fair bit, because fuel savings going to be, yes, it will still play a factor, but nowhere near as much as it did back at Michigan. So again, like I said, Seth, I love this motor track, this raceway. This is one of my all-time faves.
Clearly see the seam separating the 5 specific grooves into the corner. Be interesting to see if anybody decides to venture up there to the wall. Obviously the longer way around the racetrack, but these drivers are going to want to have the clean air to the nose, and I don't doubt that we're going to be seeing them at least 3 wide at certain portions of this race, as Robert Maleska III, as mentioned, capturing his 6th pole on the season, will share the front row with Eric Peterson. That's his best starting position so far this season. Row 2 is going to be Rick Ravon, who got a lap time in this week. He's going to be rolling off 3rd alongside of Henry Bennett. Bronson Stafford, who is currently sitting 6th in the point standings, he is going to roll off from the completion of the top 5. And Gary Corley, good qualifying lap for him, as he was up inside the top 3 for about maybe 2/3 of that qualifying session, as we take a look at the rest of the starting lineup here tonight, presented by LMCgear.com, your one-stop shop for all your motorcycle, camping, and backpacking needs, specializing in camping gear that is ultra lightweight and compact, making it perfect for carrying on your motorcycle or in a backpack. They also carry all the motorcycle accessories that you need to get your gear safely down the road. Check out lightweight motorcycle camping gear.com today. Well, we had 6 caution flags in the Michigan race earlier on this season, and we also ended up having some of those cautions be rather untimely, Scott, where it was in the middle green flag pit stop. Some drivers had to kind of come back from being a lap down around the midway portion of that race. With that being said, is that something that's in the back of these guys' mind here tonight, especially with those extra 20 laps?
For sure. I mean, an extra stop's going to be in the books, so look, they're going to make that adjustment. It's going to be an estimations race. Remember, I'm always going to say, though, first probably, we're expecting 4 to 5 stops here tonight. So, look, I mean, if they're going to have to make that many number of stops, I'm expecting the first 3 to be minimum run the tank all the way out. Tire fall off, I'm not really expecting to be a major factor. We didn't see a huge deal of it out at Michigan, so I'd expect these guys just to run very, very long. Undercut's not going to be as much of an issue. So, look, multiple different strategies as usual. Going to play themselves into the book, but I think it's going to be pretty much a procession, and we're going to see the actual fight out on track, which is always for the good for people like us, Seth.
Absolutely. Both of our former Auto Club winners are in the field tonight. We mentioned Matt Wagner, defending winner. AJ Hobson, who won this event back in Season 2, back there in the 13th position, as Maleska III leads us to the green, and we're racing here tonight at Auto Club. Top two going to get themselves single file. Battle's going to be for third place. Henry Bennett on the top, Rick Ravon on the bottom. Shorter way around the racetrack, at least early on, is going to get Ravon up into the podium spot. And Peterson's wasting no time. He's to the inside looking for the lead into the second couple of corners.
Apologies, Seth. I've actually just lost all cars. Nobody's moved up pit lane yet for me, so...
We'll see if we can get that sorted out here as, close there at the line. Ravon took a move up to the top at the start-finish line, but Peterson will lead the first lap here tonight. Ravon now going to try that second groove. 36 gets a little tight. Ravon had to give him some room. They both keep it together, and now Maleska, Henry Bennett looking to see if there's an opportunity to maybe go 3 wide into the corner. Top 5 separate back to Dylan Moskowitz. Then it's another couple of car lengths back to a second group led by Gary Corley. It now on the bottom of Eric Peterson. One thing that I remember too from the Michigan race, Scott, was the fact that everything happens so fast. The moves happen so fast, and sometimes you kind of have to be your own spotter and clear yourself, and we ended up seeing some disagreement of space late in that race. I have to wonder if that's going to be something these drivers are going to have to keep an eye on, especially here early where everybody was all wadded up on the initial start. Riding on board here with Maleska the third in the 91. Looking ahead to the battle for the race lead. Henry Bennett going to go to the inside of Rick Ravon, and he will go to the point. Peterson on driver's left of this 91. You can't quite see him here, but he's trying to edge ahead. Can't quite make that move work. Trying to tuck back in line behind Maleska going into turn 3. Moskowitz right there as well in the 4 machine. Of course, Dylan Moskowitz, much like last season, running a part-time schedule, runs the speedways, doesn't run the road courses, and right now looking very sporty in that number 4 machine as they look to the inside of Eric Peterson for the 5th position. We ended up seeing last week at Pocono, another big track, driver in Rick Ravon not put down a lap time, but very quickly work his way to the front. The big names started towards the rear of the field here, or at least have dropped back towards the rear of the field, including Nick DeGroot in the 89. The former champion has now worked his way up 4 spots since the drop of the green flag, qualified 15th, and just now moving into the 11th position, bypassing Jeff Hysong. Going to look to the outside of Charles T to break into the top 10. This is the second pack, theoretically. The first pack is running about 7/10 of a second ahead. There you see Bronson Stafford, the tail end of that lead group. Gary Corley just ahead of him. Covey Moore in that familiar aqua blue number 15, and just behind the defending winner, Matt Wagner. And it's interesting if you go back and look at the previous 2 Auto Club races, because back in season 2, AJ Hobson, he led the most laps in that one, 40 laps, but last season, it was actually Nick DeGroot who led the most laps, 34 in total. Matt Wagner would lead the second most in 27, but of course he would lead the most important one, that final lap, to pick up what was his first win on the season. It would be one of 2 victories as the caution is out. Gary Corley in the 7 has gone around. He was running at the time around the 8th position, and I'm almost wondering, we're going to be going back looking at a replay, but I'm almost wondering if there might have been contact between himself and Bronson Stafford, because when we saw them at the tail end of the pack just moments ago, they were racing very close to each other. Might have been some contact there. Corley's car doesn't look too terribly damaged. It might have been a harmless spin, but it does bring out the first caution here tonight regardless on lap number 8.
Difficult race to start things off, Seth. Obviously not, nobody's really settled in, nobody's found their grooves quite so yet, early stages of this race, just a bunch of guys basically just shuffling themselves back and forth, trying to test each other's limits, where they're all happy, and looking for where that aero is working best within each of the corners. So that's, a good little short hit out. That sets ourselves up really nicely for this next sort of round of pit stops, whether... If I, again, so there's 2 ways to think about this. If I'm at the lead end of this pack, I want to maintain that track position, but then again, at Auto Club, there's really good opportunities to overtake all over the place. Medium-sized field, not a large field, you can shake yourself back up to the lead pretty quickly if you have the talent to do so. So right here, I would be coming down to grab fuel and just giving myself just some flexibility, and we'll see where this all shakes out, where I end up.
I've got a couple of drivers that are staying out, but to your point, most of the field is at least coming down pit lane, being led by Robert Maleska III, the pole sitter. Eric Peterson following him down, along with Dylan Moskowitz, Covey Moore, and company. The 4 drivers electing to stay out. Rick Ravon, Henry Bennett, Gail Brooks, and A.J. Hobson. And we saw even at Michigan, which was run under the daytime conditions, that, 10, 15 laps in your tires, it actually really didn't affect you in terms of speed. You could still run with the drivers that had the fresh rubber. Here tonight, I would assume, with cooler track conditions under the nighttime, under the lights, that's even more prevalent, that the tires aren't going to wear quite nearly as much as they did in the season opener.
Yeah, look, I mean, there wasn't a bunch of cautions back there in Michigan. It was a pretty interesting race. There was a few time periods and whatnot where there was cautions, but ultimately it played itself all out nice and cleanly. So I'm interested to see what this will do here. How these guys are going to settle back in again now, like how aggressive they're going to be all driving. Because I don't know if anyone's going to be too keen to get back to the point. This sort of a distance is going to adjust those fuel strategies enough that, well, I mean, nobody really wants to punch the hole in the air at the best of the times, so let alone when it's an IndyCar race and all of a sudden fuel strategies might be a lot easier to get to. So I have a fair idea you're going to have a few guys that are trying to sandbag a little bit, let a few other cars pass so they can sit there and just run in their draft.
Interesting, if we look at the weather conditions here, our Michigan race was partly cloudy and 78 degrees. Here tonight, only a couple degrees lower, 73 degrees. The ambient temperature about 71. Now, of course, the big reason why there's not a huge difference between the nighttime conditions here and the daytime conditions at Michigan is, of course, we're over here on the West Coast in California. So it's going to be a lot more sweltering under the nighttime conditions than it would be if we were in the mid-United States or, of course, over on the East Coast.
I mean, you've also got to remember, I'm looking at Australian weather. I mean, we got snow over here at this point in time. So, look, do you want some of my cool weather?
Yeah, I don't even like the snow over here on the northeast coast of the United States. So, you know what?
We'll see. Keep it. We live down right along the coastline, so and right up against the mountains. So if it's snowing, that real bite in the wind, we can feel that, but we don't get any of the benefit of the snow. So we just chilled out, everything's burning because it's snowing, a couple hundred mile away, and we get none of the benefit.
Well, I know it is possible for it to snow in California, but if it snowed here at Auto Club Speedway, we wouldn't be able to call the race. We didn't reach the halfway point yet. We're only 10 laps into this one here, and Rick Ravon's going to get ready to lead us back to the green flag. Of course, Ravon coming into these races would be looking to find victory lane yet again, but I think that getting that monkey off his back, finally finding victory lane last week at Pocono, now he can head into the remaining races and just rely on what's brought him to the dance and gotten him that points lead, the consistency. Keep the rest of his competition at bay, because now it's big picture racing. Now it's trying to hold on to that points lead, win that championship at the end of the year.
I mean, that's it. I mean, in every race he's going to make margins and lose margins to some of the drivers, provided he stays clear of all the hassle. And I mean, look at where Henry Bennett and Maleska III finished last week. They were both right at the tail end of the lead lap cars. They had a horrid race, and Maleska had to go mega into fuel saving over the last 5 laps because he just was not going to make it. So, look, I mean, end of the day, Ravon's in a really, really strong position. And something I do want to point out, I actually think his wife was happier to see him win than he was, because I get the feeling he knew it was coming. It was just a matter of time, right? But whereas his wife was like, yeah, woo, you did it, so really interesting sort of mindset and setup there from Ravon. I think he's planning, and I think he's going forwards, and I think of all the drivers that we talked to, he's already playing championship implications in the back of his mind.
Mentioned about A.J. Hobson, former winner here at Auto Club back in Season 2. There he is in the 3rd position, trying to get up here to the front, as it's going to be side by side between Henry Bennett and Rick Ravon. Of course, for Henry Bennett, he's much like Maleska, had an up and down season. Yes, he's had 2 trips to victory lane, but had that hardship back at Watkins Glen where he was dealing with the connection issues. He's currently sitting 3rd in the point stands, but he's also trying to see if he can tie Robert Maleska III for most wins on the season. Speaking of Robert, there he is to the inside for the top position down the back straightaway.
It's aggressive from Robert. He wants to lead them out early on. And remember what I was talking about? This is the guy who knows what his fuel numbers are. So Maleska's saying, hey, I want to get to the point. I want to try and run off into the distance with this motor race. That's saying that fuel really isn't a major concern. Alternatively, this may mean that everyone else is just sandbagging their pace way too much for Maleska. Have a look. They're 3 wide, Seth.
They are indeed. Rick Ravon not afraid to put it 3 abreast into turn 1. Bennett's going to be the one to back out. Whoa, that 91 pushing up about a groove and a half out of turn 2. Ravon tried to pinch him down, and now Bennett says, I'll try the middle 3 wide. They're 4 wide behind them.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Hobson's getting deep in there, and we got this whole... We got that whole battle pack set. They're going nuts out here. These guys are not playing it safe. What do I always say? What do I always say? Keep yourself a car for the tail end of the race. These guys are going... It's lap 15, Seth, and we got 4 wide battles.
Absolutely. They do have that faster pair that they can use, but I don't think they want to use it in the first 20 laps of this race. Look at the run that Hobson gets to the inside of Maleska. Now Maleska tucks back behind Bennett. It settles out to double wide, but that could have been another 3 wide situation off of 2.
Yeah, and I think Bennett's really using his head here, and he's trying to follow in the tire tracks of Ravon. Ravon's trying to set an absolutely blistering pace. Have a look at how quick he's been able to get back to the 4. Yeah, he led the guys back to green here, but that just means that you're giving everyone else the draft support on that initial jump. It's not uncommon to see him settle back, 3, 4, 5 spots in. However, immediate response from him back to the 4, and he's got so much of a run that nobody else is catching him. Have a look at how much they're checking up in behind him, though. I'm having a look at Maleska. Maleska is struggling right now.
Trying to hold the bottom as we're looking at Matt Wagner in the 11 machine. He and Maleska were 2 of the drivers that came down pit road and took on the fresh rubber. They've been able to make their way up to the top 5. Yeah, that's DeGroot in the middle. Peterson's going to be the one to back out going into 1.
Nick DeGroot, how it's not often this season that we've said Nick DeGroot isn't even in the top 5. Look at him though, he's P6. I think he's just made his way up into 5th position now, and Maleska's made his way back to the 4. All of a sudden, what looked like a struggle a couple of laps ago wasn't. And have a look at this, Seth. No one is falling off this lead pack. I think we've got about 10 cars here that potentially, if they keep themselves going in terms of fuel strategy, could play themselves out for a race win.
Throw a blanket over the top 10, less than a second separation there, less than 2 seconds separating the entire top 15. Everybody towards the tail end of the field can see the race leader. That's just how close they're running, and going to be a battle for the lead down the back straightaway now. Rick Ravon on the top, Maleska on the bottom, and I'm wondering here, obviously as we mentioned, we saw back at Michigan that a few laps on the tires as opposed to fresh tires doesn't mean a whole lot, but you'd have to think with the hard battling we're seeing, at some point if we go into a long green flag run, we're going to start to see the ill effects of the older tires.
Yeah, but it's IndyCar, Seth. It's not stock cars. Stock cars, obviously, the tires are so massive that any sort of wearing towards those tires, it's going to be across a much wider surface. So that's why you see the tire fall off. With the IndyCars, they're a much narrower tire. They don't wear as much. The contact patch isn't as big. They're not generating anywhere near as much heat. Because heat's actually what causes a lot of the wear on those stock car style tires. So yes, look, there will be some tire differential. There will be some tire fall off. But I'm literally expecting maybe 0.2 of a second at the most.
Back to the inside comes Maleska. He and Ravon have been back and forth. Nick DeGroot right there in the 3rd position. It's interesting. Coming into this race, we talk about the consistency as DeGroot almost got the wall there off of 2. That car looked really tight off of the 2nd corner. But, Ravon so far this season, 8 races, 8 top 10 finishes. The other 2 drivers that have 7 top 10s on the season, the aforementioned DeGroot and the defending winner of this race, Matt Wagner.
It's really interesting, and it's kind of important to point out that whilst Maleska has definitely had a couple wins so far this season, he's also had a lot of races where he's really struggled. I remember all the way back to Road America, he didn't even finish at Road America, and that was a big issue for him in terms of his early point standings. Have a look at the guys that are surging in terms of their championship hopes. They haven't put a foot wrong so far this season. Even Henry Bennett. Henry Bennett had an awful week last time out at Pocono, so obviously he's taken 1 step wrong, but it's 1 step from the season. Ravon's leading the points because his worst finish is 6th and his best finish is 1st. I think his average finish is a podium every week.
Yeah, Pocono actually hurt both Maleska and Bennett, our 2 multi-time winners on the season, allowed DeGroot to jump both of them from 4th up to 2nd coming into tonight's point standings. There's Matt Wagner in the 11 machine, and you talk about Robert Maleska III and his wins this season. Well, one of them was the season opener at Michigan, so he does have a 2-mile speedway win under his belt, and we'll see if he can maybe sweep the 2-milers here tonight.
Yeah. I mean, especially like you remember Wagner. Look at where Wagner's chilling out right now. Look at all these guys in terms of a form guide of how well they're performing in terms of the season so far. And Wagner, remember at the top of the show, we said Wagner has said, this is my track, this is my home turf, this is where I come if I want a race win anywhere of all places. I'm feeling a little bit down in terms of my confidence. Auto Club, Michigan, these tracks, that's where I come for those wins, that's where I come for that confidence boost. Currently, he's chilling out 5th, 6th spot. He's not having the best night that he'd... Oh, there was nearly contact talking to Wagner. Who was that on the bottom side? I think it was that Hobson or was that Wagner that drifted up and made contact there? I think it might have been Wagner.
Battle for 5th place there, and yeah, that would have either been Wagner or Hobson. Not sure which one it was that was on the inside line at that time. They keep it together for the time being. Saw also Benjamin Combs. That was the car we were focused on there off of turn 2.
It's Wagner.
I'm not sure if he got loose off of 2 or if he was moving low to try and let some drivers by, but that car didn't exactly look like it was in shape coming off of that corner. And these guys, a lot of them right now look like they've got their hands full, but we know based off of not only Michigan earlier on this year, but the 2-mile tracks that they ran last season as well, the handling is just going to get worse for these drivers because as they burn the fuel, the back end of the car is going to get lighter, and they're going to have to deal with the loose condition getting closer to potential green flag pit stops.
Well, I mean, you say worse for these drivers. It's not worse. It's different. It's a handling balance. It's actually not better or worse. It's literally just how the balance of the car is playing itself out. Look, I mean, whilst they've got a big old fuel tank in the rear end of that car, the car doesn't want to rotate as well. As the fuel burns off, 2 things happen. One, car is now lighter. That means any steering inputs, anything that the tires aren't fighting back as hard, they're not struggling to overcome the weight differential. That's a huge factor in Indy cars because the fuel weight makes up a larger percentage of the overall car. And the other side of the coin is that where the fuel's based within the car makes a huge differential because the fuel tank's towards the rear end of the car. That's a lot more weight over the rear end of the car. As that fuel weight burns out, effectively you've gone from having, say, a 70% weight balance over the rear to maybe a 50, a 40%. And that shifts, not necessarily, it doesn't shift weight onto the front, it just shifts the amount of weight that's at the front end of the car, basically, which is why the car's handled different. And you'll see that across pretty much unless you can get your fuel tank in a really even spot right throughout the car, that's consistent handling across any car, and that's why you feel a difference. How that'll play itself out is you'll have less weight over the rear of the car, so the rear of the car won't be quite as steady out in the racetrack. You talk about a loose setting, it's basically the rear of the car wanting to rotate quicker than it did previously, and it's something that you're just going to have to balance. We did see a lot of issues at Michigan with a few drivers just starting to underestimate that balance change in the rear end of the car.
That car way wide there off of turn 2. I believe that might have also been the 77 Benjamin Combs yet again. I don't know if he brushed the wall or not. Didn't look like he lost a lot of momentum, so he might have been razor's edge away from that outside wall. But we saw moments ago, we were looking back here at the 61 of Bronson Stafford, courtesy of the rear camera on the 63 of A.J. Hobson. There was a method to the madness there to check on that front wing on the 61 of Bronson Stafford. Of course, remember he and Gary Corley making the contact brought out that first yellow flag, and Stafford did not spend any extra time on pit lane, so it might have been just minor enough contact that it really didn't cause damage for the 61 machine, which is important for him to be able to at least maintain the track position he had and not have to use a faster pair. Also bear in mind, Bronson Stafford started out this season with a bang. At the other sister track here at Auto Club at Michigan, he finished runner-up to Robert Maleska III.
Yeah, so, and again, that was fuel strategy. He really played himself back into things in terms of the amount of fuel he saved. He never showed a hint of speed in the early phases of the race, didn't really bring himself to the fore, wasn't able to be quick, wasn't able to stick with the lead pack, all of these sorts of things. Green flag pit stops are starting to play themselves out, and Rick Ravon's actually the first on the pit road as well. It's an interesting factor there. But, yeah, and that's important, and Stafford will know that. I'm probably going to say in terms of Stafford, correct me if I'm wrong, but Indy cars, you can change the nose cone?
Yes, I believe you can.
which more than likely Stafford's come down pit road and actually taken that change to the front end of the car. So no fast repair needed, no major damage, quick change on the nose cone, and they are relatively quick. So he's just settling himself back in. But the other thing I want to point out as well is this is the furthest back that we've actually seen Stafford running for the bulk of the season. So clearly these style of speedways, not his forte.
Just saw Henry Bennett giving up a spot inside the top 5 to head for pit lane. He, along with Rayvon and Hobson, who we saw in pit lane the lap before. Those were 3 of the 4 drivers that stayed out under our only caution up to this point. Gale Brooks will undoubtedly be down pit road in the next lap or 2. And so that means that since those drivers stayed out, about 9-10 laps into the run, that gives us a little bit of a window of when to expect to see all the rest of these drivers who all pitted under that caution, when they're going to have to start thinking about making green flag pit stops.
See, that's interesting to me, because normally, like I said, Rick Rayvon's normally one of the bright sparks in the field in terms of pit lane strategy and doing something different. The other guys that I'd be looking at is, who was our winners last week out? It was Matt Wagner, and was it DeGroot? It was Nick DeGroot? Yes. There were our other 2 pole sitters, so those guys are working together in terms of their field strategy as well. So, and remember, they threw a curveball out last week at Pocono, and they altered their strategy slightly. So, look, I'd be keeping my eyes on probably... The 3 guys I'm keeping my eyes firmly on will be Wagner, DeGroot, and Rayvon. Because obviously Rayvon's come down pit road a lot earlier. I want to see where he pops back out in terms of that fuel strategy.
Saw that tire smoke coming off of the rear firestones of Gale Brooks as he brought his 71 onto pit lane. I mean, these drivers in the draft, they're carrying about 220 miles per hour into 1 and 3. They're having to back that thing down to about 60 miles per hour before they get to that commitment line. So have to be very careful they don't get a speeding penalty, especially with the fact that you consider that Rayvon, Bennett, Hobson, all those drivers that had just pitted, they lost a lap here under green. So they're looking up to the heavens and saying, please no caution, please let this thing cycle back around.
I mean, we've seen it, right? Ultimately, the packs have started to break up a fair way. I think, pit road is definitely one of those things that causes a lot of cautions just through, drivers underestimating the need to duck on a pit lane. And, that's obviously going to be causing some issues. I was actually catching up with Bronson Stafford prior to the race as well, and he said... Look, I was running in draft for an extended period during practice, and the maximum fuel distance I was able to make it was 29 laps, so that's going to be a big factor, which means that pits are going to start showing themselves, in the next couple laps?
Should be in the next...
5 laps, I think?
3 to 5 laps, yep, depending on how much they were able to save there after they made their pit stop under that only caution.
So, look, I mean... Rayvon, I think, was looking at the caution and goes, look, this is a race that's set up for me to be near the front for most of this race, and it's going to be a guaranteed 4-stop race. I think we worked out. I don't think that these drivers... Actually, I think it's going to be a guaranteed 5-stop race. The drivers are right on the limit of having to make that 4th to 5th stop. 5th stop, I think it was. So, ultimately, they've got to be very, very careful with their fuel mileage, and that's why I think you can see Stafford's really backing that pace down. He's happy to run with somebody else. Because if he can squeak that extra lap out, and with that 1 pit stop, I think it moves it to a guaranteed 4-stopper. I think that's what Rayvon was looking at as well, was that no matter what he does, it's going to be that 4-stopper once that first caution flag flew, which is why I don't think he bothered to come down. I think he wanted to stay up front, not have to fight his way through traffic, and just be quick and consistent out in front, where he knew he could get clean air to the front wing of that car.
Maleska and DeGroot continue to swap the lead back and forth. We're watching this spirited battle between teammates. Jeff Heist.
Oh, Maleska's on the road, pit road.
Oh, yep, here comes some others. Charles Teed is in. There's a lot of them coming down pit lane this time. Oh, wow. Who was that? Was that Bronson Stafford having a lock up there for a brief moment?
Kobe Moore's kept going. Yeah, it might have been Bronson Stafford. It was one of the cars in the background as well, but so there's only a couple of cars that have continued on here. So Kobe Moore, Jim Brooks are the 2 that I can see. I'm looking, was it Peterson or it wasn't Peterson? I want to say it was Teeds on pit lane. I thought I saw... No, it's only 2 cars that have stayed out at this point in time. So it's Kobe Moore and Jim Brooks that have gone the extra lap. And Moore's in.
Moore's in this time. Let's see if Jim Brooks dives onto pit lane. Indeed, he does. So the question of who does this cycle the race lead around to? Rayvon right now is the highest of the drivers that were on pit lane about 10 laps ago. He passes Wagner there. He's actually behind Henry Bennett, so correction, Bennett's actually the highest of the drivers that had pitted about 10 laps ago, and they're going to come out behind Maleska the third and Nick DeGroot, so they'll cycle back to around third and fourth when all is said and done, but right in the same zip code as the race leader.
Yeah, and you've got to remember that they'll have, a lot less fuel on board at this portion of the race as well. When they did their stop, they would be a little bit slower just due to the fuel load. Whereas now that these guys are cycling themselves back through, you can see just Maleska just doesn't have the ability to fight them right now because he's got a lot more fuel on board. That weight's just not going to help him. So the best possible thing he can do for his race is get in underneath the rear wing of Nick DeGroot here. Let Nick just keep punching that hole in the air. He just wants to sit there and save some more fuel, save some more fuel, save some more fuel. We're going to see these guys actually get to racing each other sometime after, I think, the 100-lap mark, if it's going to continue to go green. Last pit stops are going to be anywhere from around the 90-lap mark, but a few of those guys are going to come out with a little bit of fuel that they still need to save to get to the home pier and guarantee them. So what they're going to do is after that lap 90 mark, whoever's good on fuel is going to go as hard and as fast as they can from that point in time. Everyone else is going to sit back a little bit, save the fuel, guarantee themselves to a home period, and then as soon as they're in that Goldilocks zone in terms of their fuel numbers, that's when they'll start to go. The difference will be is whoever started punching that big hole in the air out in front, have they gone early enough? And have the guys behind saved enough fuel that they didn't lose the draft to him.
We're a third of the way through this race. 40 laps in, about 80 laps to go, 78 and a half as they hit the back straightaway here. Leska and DeGroot trying to settle out who's going to be showing the way. 4 cars up in this lead group, Maleska, DeGroot, Rayvon, and Bennett, all former winners this season. Another former winner, Matt Wagner, runs about a second and a half all by his lonesome back in that 5th position. Then a second group of about 6 cars led by Bronson Stafford include Eric Peterson, Kobe Moore, Gil Brooks, Charles Teed, and Dylan Moskowitz. That's your top 11. The pit stops did not work out for a couple of drivers. Jeff Heisong lost a couple of spots on pit lane from 9th down to 12th. AJ Hobson, who was up there off the pit sequence of everybody and was up inside the top 5 because of it, he's now dropped back outside the top 10 to the 14th position.
I'm looking at Kobe Moore again. Keep your eyes on Kobe Moore as this race continues to develop. He's got that lap extra worth of fuel in the tank, remember, so he can go a little bit earlier towards the tail end of the race once he's guaranteed those fuel numbers. Additionally, have a look at the way that Rayvon's now playing this race, right? He recognizes that he's fuel compromised. He's got to do a lot more fuel saving than everyone else around him. He's not fighting. He's just chilling out. He's happy to let these guys go, punch it out, duke it out, race as hard as they want. You can just see Maleska got up in underneath Nick DeGroot's rear wing and really surged forwards, whereas Rayvon barely went anywhere. Rayvon did catch him, but it was only a little bit. You know, there wasn't a massive toe that he was getting there. Now he's getting a little bit more racy. I still think this is the wrong decision from Rayvon. I think he's just going to chill, because if he gets ahead of these guys, he's not going to clear them and get away. He's just going to start helping their fuel strategies. He's basically got to chill here, let this happen, and run with these guys.
And on the flip side, look at Henry Bennett and the gap he's got between himself and the top 3. He's still in the draft with these guys. He's getting a pretty good toe, so as opposed to Rick Rayvon getting it up and mixing up with these guys, Henry Bennett looks like he is one of those that is actually playing the fuel conservation game, because of course he's one of them that's off sequence with pretty much the majority of the field.
Well, he's also thinking about things in terms of the overall standings, because you're also going to remember he's going to have slightly worse tires. You know, everything's not going to be playing it out. He's just letting it happen. He's just chilling. There's no reason for him to push right now. I'm really concerned, though, looking back to P5, is Matt Wagner. Right now, the gap to the cars ahead is about 2 seconds, 1.8 to 2 seconds range, right? He's outside that draft window. He's getting no support right now. So slowly, the cars behind him should be starting to catch him, but they're not. Bronson Stafford doesn't have the support he needs to keep hunting down. He's starting to run off in his own little window as well. So the 2 drivers that are most at risk and most compromised are Wagner and Stafford.
DeGroot out in front. Rayvon going to go on by him again to move back up to the top position. Only had 1 caution here tonight, and after completing the first cycle of green flag pit stops, all 17 cars that took the green flag to start this race, all still running and currently all still on the lead lap. And You know I love statistics, Scott. Coming into tonight, I looked back at the 2 previous Auto Club races run back in Season 2 and Season 3 to see if there was a driver that finished at least in the top 5, if not the top 10 in both races. Only one driver was able to do so, and he's not in the field here tonight, and that's Eric Schaus.
Oh, that's interesting, because Schaus has had one of those really quiet, yet I would say Eric Schaus has been kind of an underrated success story for the season. Because, again, another driver that I don't think's actually put a foot wrong. There's been a lot of wrecks that have happened around Eric Schaus, and for me, consistently seems to be the driver that comes away on the safe side of things. So it's unfortunate that he's here tonight. I was actually really looking forward to seeing if he could start really piecing that season together with the consistency that a lot of his rivals are lacking.
Yeah, Eric Schaus not in the field tonight. Also, we got the notification earlier on this afternoon. Jim Herrick was not going to make the race here tonight, so hopefully we'll see him back next week, which is going to be short track racing. We're going to Worldwide Technology Raceways next week. That's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, the racing's as close as it is right now. Imagine what it's going to be like when we get to that short track.
We had one as well on the schedule. Was it New Hampshire that we saw earlier in the season?
We did, yeah. Made its debut
Yeah,
on the schedule.
Wasn't that a blockbuster as well? That was a phenomenal race, and, you know, Worldwide Tech it's a tricky track. It is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. You can say that something like Michigan, like Auto Club, they're a little bit easier. Basically, your main concern is just the aero package. But at Worldwide Tech, you got to make sure that you're braking at the right points. Tire wear is going to become a much bigger factor, just because you're braking, so you're applying a lot more heat through those tires. In the initial slowdown phase, there's more phases to the corner, if you will. So look, I mean, it's tricky. So Worldwide Tech, I think, is going to be another blockbuster, and New Hampshire was a huge success. It created drama. I don't think maybe necessarily a few other drivers really enjoyed New Hampshire, but boy, wasn't it a success for us in the broadcast booth.
And you remember back at Homestead where I made that whole prediction with Henry Benton and everything? I told you I put away my crystal ball. Now, I'm not making a prediction here, but
here we go.
Worldwide Technology Raceway has been a mainstay on the schedule since Season 2. Nick DeGroot won it back in Season 2. He went on to win the championship. Maleska III won at Worldwide Technology last season, went on to win the championship. Could there be a little something for whoever wins the race next week? I don't know.
Okay, I hope Rick Ravon wins next week, because what a people's champion that guy is. I love the guy. I honestly cannot get enough of him. Honestly, I would love to send some merch or something out to Ravon and get him to sign it. Just, he's that kind of guy, you know, he's one for the people.
I don't think these guys are lacking in motivation, but if they hear that statistic heading into next week, wonder how much more motivation that's going to be for those guys.
I mean, just remember the move that Maleska made for the win on, was it Jim Brooks back at New Hampshire? He was aggressive, and that wasn't even at a race that tends to decide championships. It was just an interesting race, you know? So look, I mean, you know, I think we got to sow some seeds in the interviews tonight, Seth.
I think you're right. I think we're going to have to kind of get inside the minds of these guys and what their mentality is going to be heading into Worldwide Technology, especially with that stat. That little tidbit.
Here's the thing, though, is that ultimately we'll throw that statistic out there. The best drivers will just look at it and go, "Huh, that's cool," and move on. That's it,
exactly.
Right? That is how you should adapt as a driver. You go, "Oh yeah, there's this little bit of hoodoo. There's a little bit of superstition. Cool. Why does it matter?" It doesn't to them, because it's all about skill. You know, it's all about getting out there, making sure they're doing everything that they possibly can. Is that Mike Tellier out on track?
I believe it is. Mike Tellier was scheduled to roll off this race from the 18th position. Did not make the grid, but he's going to go out there and at least turn some circuits in that 97, 52 laps down, but to at least finish out this race despite not being able to be around for the start. And going back to your point there as well, you know, completely different circumstances when we went to Worldwide Technology Raceway back in Season 2 and in Season 3. It could be an entirely different race when we get there next week. So it's all just based off of circumstances for these guys as well. You can't, if you're a driver, you can't look back and say, oh, well, last season, that race had 6 cautions, so plan for a 6-caution race this season. Now, as broadcasters, we have to go back, look at those statistics, and kind of follow the trends. But for a driver, as soon as that green flag drops, it's a brand new race. It's a brand new clean slate.
But the benefit is, as well, if you actually have a look at the drivers that we've got out here in the field as well, I think these guys are really, really good at reading the race, and it's about, yeah, in terms of preparation, I actually do want to know some of those statistics, just so I've got a little bit in the back of my mind that says, hey, we're recommending that we're going to see something along these sorts of lines. You know, we're going to see probably a couple cautions minimum, you know, this sort of a line, because you want to be able to prepare for that. At the same time, when that all happens, in the back of your mind, you're just going, cool, now I know about that. Moving on, right? So it's like that. It's interesting information. It's important to have that available to you, but that's all that matters, right? It's because you can't plan around those sorts of things. You've got to prepare for the race at all times. You need to have a plan in the back of your mind. At what are my critical lap numbers? Where do I need to get to? You know, before I'm safe to get to the end. So that's what these guys will be planning for.
Now talking about what lap they need to get to, Rick Ravon's number is coming up quickly. He's been out there now for 27 circuits since making his first green flag pit stop. So if our calculations are correct, we're going to, well, there you go. I was going to say the next couple of laps. I didn't expect it was going to be this lap, but here he comes on the pit lane.
Can you put that crystal ball away, please? Can you stop?
I'm sorry. It's retired. It's retired.
It's retired, he says, as he's making wild accusations about next week at Worldwide Tech.
I'm sowing the seeds. I'm not making predictions.
Seth,
as well in the 63 this lap.
So we're expecting Bennett. I think Bennett saved enough fuel. I think Bennett's going to go another 2-3 laps here, longer than we expected him to. So just keep your eyes on him over the next couple.
Yeah, and of course as well, you know, we talked about coming in tonight, 100 laps in the season opener in Michigan, 20 extra laps here tonight at the sister track of Auto Club, and we know when it comes down to a fuel strategy race, these drivers are so good at strategizing the race from back to front to figure out, if I come to pit road now, I'll have this number of pit stops before I get to the checkered flag. For Henry Bennett and some of these guys that were off sequence, does that 20 extra laps throw a bit of a monkey wrench into it for them based off of, you know, the strategies that they might have played back in the season opener?
Yes, but again, they'll be planning for it. It's not, you know, everyone knows about it. You log into the server, you have a look at everything, and you're like, okay, the race is this long, but they'll plan for that as well in advance. Like, it's not just as simple as just going, oh, yeah, look, I mean, oh, did I miss 20 laps on this race? Oh, damn. Oh, well, that's the race over. No, they plan for that. They know. So, yeah, you know, whatever.
Got some great battles here just inside and just outside of the top 10. That's Kobe Moore making a pass on Eric Peterson for 7th. Jeff Heisong and Jimmy Drynan, they've been mixing it up back here for that final spot inside of the top 10. Heisong's been one of those drivers that's not been afraid to take the run into the corner and drive it deep down to that white line. I never would expect to use the term slide job and, you know, open wheel racing in the same sentence, but it's kind of what he's been doing, and he's been making it work.
It's not necessarily a slide job as chopping the aero off your opponent's wing. It's basically taking the space away from them, and they need to be able to turn back around and get back underneath you. And that, we both know that's just not going to happen, right? You're not going to be able to all of a sudden just find all this extra grip and send the car lower on the corner. That's not how that works. So look, I mean, that's what they'll all be thinking. They'll be going, yeah, look, this is a bit rude. I would prefer if you didn't do it. You're going to do it anyway. All right, whatever. It's just going to happen. Let it happen.
Saw Henry Bennett there on pit lane for his scheduled stop. Gale Brooks came down the same lap as he did, so now we're awaiting all these drivers, all of them that took the advantage of our only caution back on lap number 8. They're only about 5 to 6 laps away from when they're going to have to hit pit road for a second time, and the officials down there in pit road, at least so far, have had nothing to do in terms of policing the pit road speed. Everybody so far in their first round of green flag pit stops, they have been clean and been able to maintain the pit road speed, and those 4 drivers that were just on pit road a moment ago, they all made it down to the 60 miles per hour speed limit as well. So good job by all these guys, not only making good green flag pit stops, but clean green flag pit stops as well. No penalties so far.
Well, you say they don't have anything to do down there. They still have to point the gun. They still have to measure speeds. They still have to do calculations. It's just that their decision column looks pretty empty, as if they've done nothing. And again, they're not down there. They don't get paid based upon the number of fines. They're not a police officer. They're not out here trying to hit a quota. That's a little bit controversial for Australian policing. So I never mentioned that. Never brought that up.
I think you're the most popular person in the officials clubhouse if you have a full ticket book. So nobody's popular here. Nobody's gonna be popular here tonight, at least up to this point. Gru and Maleska, they continue to battle back and forth. And, we kind of would think, well, one of these drivers would want to tuck in behind the other, allow them to be able to cut the air, benefit from the draft, and save maybe an extra lap or two of fuel. But when we come to these type of tracks, and we hammered this home at Michigan too, these are momentum tracks. When you get that run, you've got to take it somewhere, because if you check up, if you lift to avoid running to the back of that car in front of you, it's going to lose you more ground than it's going to gain you. So you have to make that pass on that driver because of just how much the draft is, how much of that slipstream you get.
Yes, I'm going to say yes and no. Yes, in the basically it's in the other driver that's cutting your runner off. It's in his benefit to allow you actually to make the pass, because you want the driver making the overtake to maintain their momentum. And the reason why you want them to maintain their momentum is that you actually want them to be able to keep going with what they've got. You want them to be able to push on and pull you along with them. So if anyone's blocking off those sorts of runs, that's actually a really, really bad idea.
Charles Teed coming down pit road behind race leader Robert Maleska III. Kobe Moore, Dylan Moskowitz going to follow him in as well. It's going to come down between DeGroot, who now leaves pit lane, and Maleska III, who is still on pit road. Actually, it might not, because I'll tell you what, Henry Bennett, Rick Ravon did a heck of a job on keeping themselves locked up. They're actually going to try and swing around Nick DeGroot. This could be an exchange for the lead when everything cycles.
Yeah, it could be, and it could be a big, big exchange as well. You got to remember that there's a whole bunch of guys that have now managed to go that extra lap. Charles Teed has pushed himself that one extra lap. Kobe Moore's still out there. He's on that 1 lap longest cycle. He's actually managed to go, exactly the same number of laps as Nick DeGroot. So there's a few guys now that are playing themselves back into things. Maleska has gone another lap entirely on these guys, but he's still coming up to momentum. These guys, whilst it looks like they may not catch back up to them, they will, just because Maleska is still coming back up to momentum. I think a lot of these guys are just going to want to try and breeze past Maleska and work together to keep Maleska well and truly behind them. But if you remember back to Michigan, they tried to do that there. Maleska was just like, all right, I'm going to sit here. You guys can go for it. Do whatever you guys want.
Riding on board here with Rick Ravon, looking ahead to the current race leader, Robert Maleska III. And you saw there when he was on the front straightaway, those little clouds of smoke lingering around the start-finish line. That's from drivers locking up those rear tires. Especially, I've seen that right rear do a lot of smoking with drivers trying to get it woed down to pit lane. And I jinxed it, Scott. First speeding penalty handed out here tonight. Jimmy Drynan in the 99 had to sit on pit road for an extended period of time, and subsequently finds himself 1 lap down the 17th position.
Yeah, you did jinx it. This is all on you, Seth. You literally said they were sitting down there, they weren't doing anything, they had to do something then. You forced their hand. Look what you've done, Seth.
I want to look at the gun. I wonder if maybe they tried to prove me wrong.
It's trying to hand out penalties that don't exist, is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm wondering. I don't know. No, they're good at their jobs. They're good at their jobs. I think they probably got it right. Anyway,
You're trying to backtrack and cover yourself off now, Seth.
I am. Well, I attempted. It was a valiant. No, that wasn't a valiant attempt either. I'm trying to cover up. Trying to cover up the cover up. Anyway, top 4 out in front still. Still throw a blanket over them. Ravon, Maleska, DeGroot, and Bennett. One driver that really is trying to get up here with these guys, though, is Matt Wagner. We saw that he had lost touch with them after the first cycle of green flag pit stops. He's still back here, now back in the clutches of, that's Mike Telly of the lap machine, and Bronson Stafford's been able to leapfrog him now up into the top 5. So I think it's safe to say from Matt Wagner, he's one of those guys that would love to see a caution flag come out, get back up there with the top guys, and try and see if he can win here at Auto Club in back-to-back seasons.
Yeah, he's definitely saying that in the back of his mind, but, at the end of the day, I think it's just too far gone for him. So, look, it's gonna be a really, really difficult race for him to be able to get himself back up in here. I really don't feel like he's capable of doing that from the current position that he's in. So he's got a long way to climb if he's going to be able to do that. But it's so far back, and we've got so little of the race left, and he's just again hung out to dry, no draft support. And Bronson Stafford as well. We've got this phenomenal battle building up at the front end of town, and the guys that are going for the lead, they're having a phenomenal time. But again, there's just nothing anyone can do to bridge that gap. They're the pace that they are running, and you got to remember we've got 2 cars in this lead pack that are fuel strategy compromised as well.
Looking at the battling. Oh, car on the wall. Covey Moore definitely brushed it with the right side tires there. Able to keep that thing pointing in the right direction, but that could have very well been the caution that a lot of the drivers in the field were looking for, as that was a battle between himself, Peterson, and Moskowitz for 8th, 9th, and 10th position. So close call there for those guys, but going back to the point that I was making there about the green flag pit stops for these guys, they've got, what, one more at least trip to pit road, but if I'm looking at drivers like Nick DeGroot, Robert Maleska III, I think they've got at least one more trip after that to pit lane. I'm not certain, but Bennett and Ravon, they might, with the numbers I'm looking at, they might be able to make it on just one more pit stop.
It's difficult. I think everyone's actually on the same pit strategy, so to speak. But I think the differential comes from the fact that some of these cars are going to have to spend longer on. So the 2 cars in this lead pack that are best situated on fuel are both the Groot and Maleska, right? Those guys are going to be fine at the end of when everything plays itself back out. Those guys are going to be completely and utterly fine. They will make it in terms of fuel strategy, right? And they're going to have to put the least amount of fuel in. I'm really worried for Ravon and Bennett. After their final pit stop, they have to put a lot more fuel in the car. They're going to come out a lot further back up the road, which is a big problem. So,
well, we mentioned last week when Rick Ravon picked up his first win of the season, he started towards the rear of the field, 17th position, and drove his way up to finish in P1 as we ride on board with, well, I was going to say current race leader, but now Rick Ravon edging ahead, Nick DeGroot. He started this race, as you'll see, from the 15th position, had to fight his way up through traffic, so we may end up having back-to-back races if DeGroot's able to close this thing out, of a race winner starting outside of the top 10.
yeah, potentially. And I mean, wouldn't that be a story to be able to tell as well? Right home, tell the family, hey, look, these guys have managed to win it from outside the top 10. And what a win it was for Ravon as well from the back of the pack. He made his way through safely and securely. You got to remember that Bennett and Maleska didn't have that same race. They had one of the more difficult races. They didn't get a caution to save them as well last week. So it's not as if we're just sitting here and saying that, hey, this is the easiest thing that you can possibly do in terms of racecraft and race standing.
Also, when we end up having the long schedules for the seasons, when we get to the midway portion of the year, drivers will take that opportunity to kind of reflect on the first half of the schedule, their performances, and what they need to do down the home stretch. Well, tonight is that halfway point. After this race is over, we will be halfway through the schedule, and as mentioned, Worldwide Technology coming up next week. We got Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. That's going to be coming up in 2 weeks' time. The Milwaukee Mile lingers on the horizon. I mean, there's a lot of tracks. We talked about the fact that New Hampshire earlier on this season, it made its debut on the schedule. Same for Kentucky. There's a lot more tracks that they've not run here under the Dark Horse banner that they're going to be taken to for the first time here in this schedule.
Yeah, which is difficult. I mean, it's not an easy prospect either. So look, I mean, everyone's going to have their heads down and practicing. Don't think for a moment that these guys aren't practicing either. These guys are putting a lot of time, a lot of effort into making sure that they're coming out here and they're putting their best skills and their best sets on display. This isn't an easy contest for them at all.
Well, Dark Horse fans... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, to compete at the level that they're at requires a certain amount of time and investment. So it's not easy at all.
LMCgear.com is our sponsor here tonight for our starting lineup as well as our finishing results. And a reminder to all the Dark Horse Racing Series fans out there, if you head over to LMCgear.com and use the promo code DARKHORSE10, you get 10% off any order, so be sure to do that. Big thank you to LMC Gear for their sponsorship here in the Dark Horse Racing Series, as We continue to try and figure out what is going to be the winning strategy. It's looking like it's going to come down between 4 former winners who, coming into tonight's race, have a combined 7 wins on the season. The only other former winner that is currently not up here in this lead group is Matt Wagner, mired back in the 6th position.
And Wagner's put a line through Wagner. Put a line through him. Barring a caution, he's done. His strategy is done. There's no way that he can compete for this win. So
that night goes worse for Kobe Moore. Oh, it looks like he's actually pushing his car back to the garage area. Kobe Moore, we saw, had to make that unscheduled pit stop just a couple laps after he brushed the wall out of turn 4. Returned back to the track 1 lap down. Had used his fast repair at that point in time as well, but apparently ran into trouble again down pit lane, and he is the first retiree out of this race. Just a little bit of a side note here as well. 2 other drivers are a fast repair in the hole. Both of the Brooks drivers, the father and son, Jim Brooks and Gail Brooks, when they came down pit road last time, they took on their fast repair. And is it safe to say, Scott, that on the final pit stop for most of these drivers, I know that a lot of these guys have kept their cars clean, they've not brushed the wall, they've not made contact with each other, but is there anything, the abrasiveness of this track, anything that could cause these drivers to maybe just burn that fast repair, gain a couple extra miles per hour of speed?
no, to be perfectly honest, they would want to, just in case something happens in that final stretch, you want to keep it under your belt as well, because you got to remember, we always talk week after week after week that these guys and their effective, they step up their strategy every week of the season. They step up their racecraft, especially in those final 20 or so laps. So look, I'd be hanging on to it in the back pocket. There's no reason to burn it. It's going to gain you nothing. The cars aren't running low enough. You know, they're not scraping anything. They haven't touched the wall. And if they did, they'd know about it. So, and we'd be able to see it. So there's no reason in my mind.
I'll tell you what's going to be interesting heading into Worldwide Technology Raceway next week is the fact of what the point stands are going to look like. Because I mentioned coming into this race that the top 6 in the points were only separated by 74 points from Rayvon down to Bronson Stafford. Well, as Rayvon hits pit road, if you look at the top 6 just before Rayvon hit pit lane, that was your top 6 in the point standings. So there's not going to be a whole lot of moving and shaking going on with these guys if they manage to finish where they were running just before the 2 dove down to the pit lane entrance.
Yeah, 100%. There's literally nothing on the table. You know, there is. It's basically you're minimizing your losses, minimizing the gains. Basically, if you're in Rick Rayvon's perspective, and you finish P5s, let's say, that's a big win for you. You don't lose anything to the guys that are ahead of you out on the racing surface. You don't, you know, they're going to gain a couple of points, but they've got to do more than that if they're going to start assailing you, you know. And if you come out next week and you pop out a win at Worldwide Tech, all of a sudden that margin that they made up this week means absolutely nothing. So they've got to do more than that. They have to, if anyone wants to do a championship here, they've got to go out and they've got to win.
Tell you what, I'm a little worried for Rick Rayvon now because he came to pit lane with 34 laps remaining. We've not seen a driver here tonight be able to stretch it that far, and I'm not necessarily certain unless he does some major saving here on this final run or a caution comes out to save him.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
not
dead in the
certain.
water.
Yeah, I mean, everybody else, with maybe the exception of Henry Bennett, if he can make it a couple of extra laps, get at least around the target lap of 29 to go, he might be able to make it on just one more pit stop. Everybody else here, Maleska, DeGroot, Stafford, Wagner, we know that they're just going to have to make one more pit stop. So the strategy call not working out here, it doesn't look like, for last week's winner and our current points leader. This is going to be interesting too, because if this all cycles around, where does this put Rayvon in the overall finishing results, and subsequently, does he keep the points lead going into next week?
Well, it depends. I mean, if he finishes as far back as he is, because you got to remember the guy can basically, you know, play himself back into contention a little bit here by just sort of backing things down and trying to keep himself in contention just through minimizing losses. So if he doesn't make another stop here, yeah, he's going to be slow. But have a look at how spread out the pack is now. If he can just find a drafting buddy. I really think tonight Rayvon has just pushed too hard for my liking. You know, I think he had an option at multiple points throughout the evening to potentially win this race if he just backed off. But at multiple points tonight, he's wanted to get to the 4. and that's just a big old problem. So look, I mean, we'll see. So
Like Bennett may come to pit road this time, and I think he should be right on the target lap now of being able to make it the rest of the way. He'll be hitting the start-finish line with 29 laps remaining, so he should be good on fuel to get to the checkered flag. Now, what about these guys here of De Groot and Maleska? Because both of them have come to pit road on the two-cycle green flag pit stops on different laps. This last time by De Groot did 1 lap earlier than Maleska, so obviously a little bit of mind games going on there. Do one of them dive onto pit road as soon as the fuel window is open, which would be right now, or do they come down together? I mean, what kind of mind games take place here in these next 3 to 4 laps?
I'm running long, and the reason I'm running long is I want to sit there and I want to receive the benefit of the draft for as long as possible. We've just seen 2 guys go to pit lane from this league group, right? So we know that there are guys that are out here that are fuel compromised. They have to do something in terms of their fuel strategy to play themselves back into the race, right? So ultimately, if I'm in these guys' perspectives, my targets are just sit here, just let it happen. There's nothing I can really do. You know, it just basically at the end of the day, I've got to wait because it's going to save me time on pit road.
Well, guy who didn't wait, Bronson Stafford on pit lane from the 4th position. Gonna try and see if he can gain some track position here with a short pit strategy. So a driver going outside the box here, trying to see if he can not only gain some spots on track, maybe some spots in the point stands. And I mean, who knows? He was currently running at the time about 2.5 seconds, I think it was, behind the top 2. I don't think he'll gain that much, but you know, we've already seen the speeding police out here tonight. If De Groot or Maleska make a little bit of a mistake, that could put Bronson Stafford right back up in the thick of it to maybe try and get his first win on the season.
And that's it. You know, you got to, again, make yourself available to win a race. That's what we talked about all season long. And I mean, Stafford's not been quick tonight. He hasn't had the pace to match with these league guys. What he has had is the skill and the ability to recognize that when and where he needs to push. So we may all of a sudden just see him turn off the wicker a whole bunch and just go for it. He may be safe compared to the rest of the guys that are around him right now.
Wagner, Combs, High Song, Jim Brooks, they were on pit road the last lap. Nick De Groot from 2nd place hits pit lane this time. We'll see if that forces the hand of race leader Robert Maleska III. Will he be coming to pit road this time? He could stay out another lap should he choose, I believe. Running low there through 3 and 4, and he is going to pit. I thought he might be staying out, but nope, he's going to come down pit lane. Really hard on the brakes there. A lot of tire smoke off the left sides as he'll come down to the attention of his crew. And this is pretty much the money stop. This is the pit stop that pretty much is going to maybe decide our race winner here tonight.
That's it. It's about getting Woad up there. The reason Maleska's coming now is because he wants to make sure that he's good in terms of fuel mileage. He wants to make sure that he's going to make it home, you know, and also cover off his opponent. That is such an important factor. You know, when you're in this sort of a situation, you need to make sure that you ensure that your opponents don't get away from you. The undercut could be super, super strong, and he just wants to basically keep the rest of the field in his eyes at all times. So his target is to come out either ahead, which he has done, or behind and be in a draft range and know that he is good in terms of fuel mileage.
You see him merging back up here on the back straightaway, looking on from Nick De Groot. That's Rick Raybon in the 2, who, according to our calculations, cannot make it without coming to pit road at least one more time. However, he could be an X factor in this. He could maybe offer some drafting help to either Nick De Groot or Henry Bennett, help them get around this 91 for the race lead before he has to make that final pit stop.
Well, you said offer some draft support to the guys that are around him at this point in time. I mean, it could be the fact that if you have a look right now, the cars are around him. Nick De Groot, he's already gone up and he's tried to help him as much as he possibly can. So look, I mean, you know, really good opportunity for him to be a nuisance / assistance factor to somebody, and he's just done just that.
If we're crunching the numbers, though, obviously Maleska caught fire at the early portion of the season, 8 races in, 3 trips to victory lane. But if you look at himself, Henry Bennett, and Nick De Groot, he's the furthest back behind Rick Raybon for the points lead. So If you're the 2 car, do you maybe want to help that 91? Have him be the one to go to victory lane? Because, Nick DeGroot, if he wins here and Rayvon loses enough spots, only 28 points back, he could take the points lead from you heading into next week. So do you maybe want to help the guy that's the furthest back of these 3 behind you in points?
Oh, 100%, Seth. I mean, again, no-brainer. You want to work with him. Look at, especially keep your eyes on right here. Rayvon's just let him go. Didn't fight it. Didn't contest it. Just lets it happen, right? The guy, he's clearly got his head screwed on tonight. He knows exactly what his targets are, who he's fighting, and who he's trying to assist, and who he's trying to leave out to dry. And again, watch what he does here with the drafting assistance. He knows that he's not in necessarily for this race victory, unless he knows something that we don't.
I'm going to throw out another statistic here and concerns Nick DeGroot. Now, DeGroot back in Season 2, when he won the championship, he came in around, I think it was the either third of the way through the schedule or halfway point of the schedule, but went to victory lane multiple times en route to winning that championship. So he did not actually take part in the Auto Club race back in his championship season. However, if we go back to last year in Season 3, he led a race high 34 laps, but en route to a 25th position. So if you're looking at a guy that's looking for some Auto Club redemption here tonight, I think you might be looking at the former champ.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too, Seth. I mean, he definitely wants to put himself out there, especially getting the interesting factor is he's got to put his season back on track. Have a look though. Have a look. All of a sudden, Nick DeGroot and Rick Rayvon have decided that they're going to get a motor on. Sorry to take us back to a motor race here. And you actually watch immediately. Maleska's had to respond. Right? He's immediately turned up the wicker on his car. He sees what these guys are trying to do, and he's trying to make sure that they can't just take the race away from him.
Mentioned just before, we saw the Cycle Green Flag pit stops take place here for the potential final time of the night. At the top 6 in the running order with the top 6 in the standings, well, nothing's changed. Bronson Stafford, Matt Wagner there in 5th and 6th place behind these top 4, so not a whole heck of a lot's going to happen in terms of the point standings heading into next week. We'll have maybe a couple of drivers move up or fall down a spot, but it's still going to remain awfully close heading into the short track next week. But less than 20 laps to go, 17 officially on the board now. Nick DeGroot showing the way, Rick Rayvon short on fuel, Maleska looking for his 4th win on the season, and Bennett trying to tie Maleska for most wins as he's looking for his 3rd.
That's just it, Seth. It's continuing to get spicy here as well. Maleska's still managing. He's really in race management mode. All of a sudden, I'm actually starting to put Henry Bennett in the strong seat of all of these 3 guys, because you'd think that he should be a mile off of what they're trying to do and where they're trying to be at the moment, but he's not. He's right here, and he's right up to date with them. So keep your eyes on him.
Yeah, he was kind of one of our question mark drivers around the early portion of this race because he was on the same strategy as Rick Rayvon was, but he was able to save enough fuel that he reached the target lap of 29 laps to go when he came down pit lane. And running back here at the tail end of this lead group in the draft of Robert Maleska III, I think he's saving even more to make absolutely certain he'll make it back to the checkered flag.
There's a car woed up. There might be a car out of fuel, Seth.
It could be. Gary Corley.
Is it Gary Corley?
Yes.
He was running really, really slow. Like, slower than he needed to be. No, the car's engine's still on that car. Okay, never mind. Ignore me. But I was just watching him on my readouts, and all of a sudden his speed was a mile and a half off the pace. Telly is also going to make his way down pit road as well to get his final service and whatnot done. So, look, all of these guys that have, obviously their races haven't played out in the best possible way. They're just, they're doing what they can just to, again, make sure that they make it home, they get the points that they need to get.
I think it's safe to say for Gary Corley, yeah, I think he had an issue. I'm not sure what it was, but we've seen most of these drivers, when they come down pit road for a regularly scheduled stop, they take that low exit out of turn 4 and try and carry as much speed as they can down to the commitment line. Corley, as we noticed there, was down on the apron of 3 and 4. He had something happen because he actually just came down, took on the faster pair, and is down and away. So, fortunately, whatever it was did not bring out the caution flag here. We get to see how this green flag run potentially to the finish is going to play out for at least 3 of these 4 drivers, but that loses Corley another lap, now 2 laps down in the 16th position.
Unfortunate, and again, Corley's another one of these drivers that's not had a great season, not had a bad season. They've had a really, really middling kind of season, you know. So it's unfortunate for him to come unstuck in the final phases of this race. I've just taken a look back through the pack again towards Matt Wagner and a bunch of these guys that are way back there. Again, Wagner come into this race with so much confidence. He sold me a dummy. I was expecting him to be out here and just completely and utterly in control of what happened tonight. That's not the case, Seth. I'm really surprised.
Yeah, that first round of green flag pit stops just kind of seemed to take him out of the picture, and I don't know if it was maybe him being a little bit too conservative coming onto pit road, or maybe these drivers here were a little bit more aggressive getting onto pit lane. I'd love to know what the deciding factor was that kind of took him out of the picture for potentially going back-to-back here at Auto Club. And right now, I mean, the best battle on the track is what you're looking at here for the race lead. If you go back to Matt Wagner, he's got 2.5 seconds, or actually, correction, he's 2.5 seconds behind Bronson Stafford, 2 seconds ahead of Charles Teed. I mean, I'm looking back through the field, and the closest battle, you know, inside or outside of the top 10, not counting these top 4, is about 1.5 seconds between Benjamin Combs and Jim Brook for the 11th position. So everybody's just kind of running in their own little space here, trying to make it to the finish. This is where the action is at, up in the battle for P1.
And the interesting factor as well, Seth, don't forget that the guys that are up here at the front end of town as well, Rayvon, we think, is fuel compromised. Has not slowed his pace at all. So I get the feeling that he's committed to this strategy and he's just going to stick with it no matter what happens here. And that concerns me in a big, big way. So again, it's not resolved. I've got to kind of keep my eyes on it just to see how this plays out, you know?
Well, here's the thing, okay? So if our calculations with the 29 laps are correct and he can't make it on fuel, he's going to have to pit in the next 4, maybe 5 laps, which is going to put him 4 laps short of the finish. I think he has to be in push mode, though, because as I mentioned, the field's really spread out. There is the possibility that he could come to pit lane and be able to gain a couple of spots before we get to the checkered flag. In order to do that, though, he's got to turn some qualifying laps and open up the gap back to those drivers that are going to pass him when he does get onto pit road.
The interesting, yeah, look, I mean, that's all well and good, but the other interesting factor for me here, Seth, as well, is keep your eyes on what Maleska and De Groot are doing. Because if you think about the way that they're driving right now, Maleska's not being aggressive at all. So I wonder whether or not Maleska may have miscalculated his fuel in some format, and now he's suffering from that. I really don't know what to tell you.
Not sure about that. We just saw AJ Hobson on pit lane. That's an unscheduled stop for the former Auto Club winner back from Season 2, as he was sitting in his pit stall for a good portion of time, just now leaving pit lane, but going to be trapped 3 laps down. 7 laps remaining here at Auto Club. Nick De Groot continuing to show the way. De Groot's trying to become the 3rd repeat winner on the season, trying to join the 2 drivers that are trying to reel him in, Maleska the 3rd and Bennett.
Well, here's the thing. Rayvon just came on the radio. I think Rayvon just said he's pitting. So, yeah, there he is. There he goes. That's Rayvon done. That's his night.
And how is this going to play into the point standings? Only 28 points over De Groot, and De Groot out in front looking for the victory. Rayvon's going to fall way down in the running order. We'll see where he cycles around when his pit stop is complete, but what was a 4-horse race now turns into a trio with a little less than 6 laps remaining down the back straightaway. De Groot, Maleska, Henry Bennett, all former winners, looking for another trip to victory lane and looking for 2 of them their first, correction, all 3 of them looking for their first Auto Club win here in the Dark Horse Racing Series.
Yeah, so now it tightens up. Have a look at Maleska, though. Immediately responds. The instant Rayvon gets out of the way here, immediately responds. I still think Bennett is fuel compromised. I don't think he's safe yet. He's at risk here of losing a podium, losing P3, but there's such a huge gap back to Bronson Stafford, so don't necessarily just immediately say, oh yeah, he's definitely compromised in terms of fuel, he's definitely out of this one. That's not necessarily the case. So I'd be keeping my eyes out for Bennett and how far he drops off the pace, and all of a sudden, again, Maleska's responding. The instant that Rayvon pulls off and he's no longer in terms of the race win because of his fuel strategy, immediately responds, wants to push to the 4. With a couple laps left to go, I don't think the guy that leads us back to the white flag is the guy that wins this race.
Keep an eye on these passes, runs, and crossovers, and take a look these next couple of laps leading up to the white flag of who's the one that gets back to the start-finish line first, because I guarantee you this is the sizing up point, this is the experiment point that these drivers realize it could come down to a game of inches. It could come down to that front wing as to who's going to take this checkered flag.
That's just it, Seth. I mean, it's still going here. There's nothing confirmed at this point in time either. You know, keep your head down. Keep your eyes forward, guys. This is it. Everything's not decided until the last.
Bill Brooks could not make it on fuel. He's hit pit lane here with 3 laps to go and subsequently going to lose a lap. Rick Ravon's going to pick up that spot, moving up to the 12th position. 2 laps remaining. 4 miles at Auto Club to determine our winner. Nick DeGroot, Robert Maleska the third, 2 former champions trying to settle it out here tonight in California.
Wouldn't it be good for Nick DeGroot to come down and grab a win here? I think he needs this. His season hasn't gone the way that he wants. He's had multiple big mistakes here, and Maleska's the same. So this is 2 guys here that are attempting to get their seasons back on track, get everything back underway, and Maleska runs to the fore right at the right time. He's a long way ahead here, Seth.
He is. I wonder if that's by design or if DeGroot may just not have enough to get up to him. 1 more lap to go here at Auto Club. DeGroot up to the top lane, the 3rd groove, as Maleska hugs the bottom off of turn 2. Still about 3 car lengths back to DeGroot, heading for the final couple of corners.
He's too far. This is such a big margin. I think DeGroot might have been a lot more fuel compromised than he would have liked. Maleska's got this. This is over.
Robert Maleska III won the sister track at Michigan in the season opener. He'll sweep the 2-milers here this season as he takes the checkers tonight at Auto Club, his 4th victory on the season.
Yeah, what a run by Robert Maleska, too. The guy has driven a phenomenal race. Remember what I said, keep your eyes on him at these sorts of miles. He's happy to let other guys punch out it early in front and just run away with things. He's not fazed by that at all. So great drive by him once again.
Here's the interesting thing as well, because if you go back to Road America when he had his issue there, what did he do the following week at New Hampshire? He went to victory lane. We talked about the struggles he had last week, finishing 14th at Pocono. What does he do 1 week later? Goes to victory lane here tonight at California.
Yeah, what a great job. What a great job. I mean, he drove a phenomenal race, you know. So what a well-done race by him. I mean, he's driven phenomenally. He planned perfectly. He put himself in the right positions at all the right stages of the race. And, you know, he's down here and he's in victory lane because of that.
Burning it down here, right on that AAA logo, the Auto Club logo, right in the infield. 4th time this season he gets to burn it down, and 2nd time he gets to do it at a 2-mile track. It's also, I believe, I'll have to double check, but I believe it's the 4th time that he has gone coast to coast, pole to win this season, as he started this race from the inside of the front row. Let's take a look at the finishing results here tonight. And 5 of the 6 drivers that came into this race inside the top 6 in the standings are going to finish up inside of the top 5. The question is, how many points do they gain on Rick Ravon, who came into this race as the points leader, and tonight, a couple of laps short on fuel, about 4 laps short on fuel, going to be bringing it home in the 12th position.
That's disappointing. That is a big issue for Rick Ravon. Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, it may not be the end of the world for his championship, but remember what we were saying, again, it's about minimizing your losses. Tonight, he's done the complete opposite to that. And, look, I mean, you know, such it is. He's tried to do everything he possibly can, and unfortunately, it just wasn't enough tonight.
And with the field getting spread out there with those green flag pit stops, a bit of a shame that a lot of these other guys that are going to get solid finishes tonight didn't get more TV time. Charles Teed bringing it home in the 6th position, came into this race 10th in points. He gained 2 spots in the standings after Pocono last week, so he'll continue his climb up through the top 10. Eric Peterson, who's having a tremendous season, came into this race 8th in the point standings, going to finish in 7th place. Dylan Moskowitz and Jeff Highsong finishing there in 8th and 9th with their teammate going to victory lane. And Benjamin Combs, who appeared to have some early issues, able to fight that machine up there into the top 10 for a solid outing here tonight.
Yeah, some really strong finishes by a lot of our drivers here tonight, and it's some good opportunities for a lot of these guys as well. They ran a clean race. They made sure that they were available to get the finishes that they needed to be in terms of where they needed to be in the overall point standings, and they come home and they get. I think they get the just desserts. I think they've done a great job here.
17 drivers took the green tonight. 17 drivers finished when Mike Tellier came out onto the racetrack after missing the start. Only one driver finished in the garage area, and that was Covey Moore, who will finish in 17th position here tonight. 11 drivers finished this race on the lead lap, and as mentioned, Rick Ravon there, one lap down in the 12th position. Going to be very interesting to see where this situates him points-wise. Does he keep the points lead? Is he going to be trying to chase somebody down for the points lead next week at Worldwide Technology? And what does the landscape of the top five look like with how close it was points-wise coming into this evening's event at Auto Club? But man, oh man, I'll tell you what, some great racing tonight. I mentioned coming into this one that in the season opener in Michigan, we had 6 cautions. Only 1 caution came out here tonight, and that was in the first 10 laps of this race. We stayed clean and green for a majority of this one, and it ended up giving us the fuel strategy race that we got to enjoy here this evening.
Yeah, and it was a good race too. I mean, have a look at the way that things played out. It was a phenomenal race. It was phenomenal the way that it ran all the way through as well. I mean, at the end of the day, we can say, oh, look, I think we were mistreated. I don't think we were mistreated in any way, shape, or form tonight. I think we've had a strong, phenomenal showing, and I don't think we could have really asked for all that much more, if I'm being honest, Seth.
Absolutely agree with you. Well, I think, unfortunately, much like when he ended up taking the checkered flag a couple of weeks ago at Homestead, Miami, we probably will not be able to speak with Henry Bennett. We'll see if he does hop in here, then we certainly will talk with him. But for the time being, let's see if we can talk with tonight's runner-up finisher. I think he might have led the most laps here tonight as well. Could be interesting to see that statistic because there was a lot of exchanging for the lead between DeGroot and Maleska and Bennett, and Wagner was up there for a time, and we saw Rick Ravon up there. I don't know who led the most laps here tonight, but he was out in front for a good portion. Let's talk with Nick DeGroot. Hey, Nick, it's Scott and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you.
Man, you had a strong car here tonight. We saw you fighting tooth and nail with the 91, the 007, the 2. It looked like the 4 of you guys were going to be settling out on who was going to win this thing. All of a sudden there, though, in those last couple of laps after you drifted back to second, just didn't seem like you could get back up there to Maleska. What was it that you were lacking there in that final stint?
Talent to to deal with the dirty air. I was not doing a good job managing the dirty air and picking my lines. And that one corner in particular, I think it was turn 3, coming to 2 to go. I got real close to him, and instead of just taking a little bit higher line and getting a good run on the front stretch, I got greedy and tried to throw it under him, and he slammed the door shut. At that point, I think the race was over because it took the next 3 laps just to get my momentum back. So that's on me, but I'm still very happy. It was a great points day, and it was a hell of a battle up there that whole race. I love long green races like that.
I mean, it was a good night overall. I mean, the way that the arrow works here, I mean, everything worked in the favor, I think, of the fans. I think we got probably one of the most exciting, the most enjoyable races that we've had so far this season. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. It was, not only was it clean, it was just, I mean, you have all those green laps, and you have 4 cars still duking it out for the lead there the whole time, swapping the lead back and forth, which is just really cool. But yeah, clean air was big, and you could get big runs, which allowed Rob to get by me. And once you got that clean air, if you're someone like me that was struggling in that dirty air, there's really not much I could do. But I was hoping in those final laps that we were getting close to Jimmy in the 99, and I was trying to get within his draft before Rick pitted so that I could just pull up on him. And unfortunately, just a few tenths shy of doing that. But oh well, it's still an awesome race.
I mean, I'm going to steal this one away from you, sir. Sorry, you go ahead after this one. We saw how crucial was it to change your attitude to the race based around Raybon's pitting strategy, because Maleska was just happy to just sit back there and watch and watch and watch. I think it worked against you that he got to be able to watch you and how you were dealing with the dirty air, because then he just drove right through past you and you couldn't respond at all.
Yeah, probably. He's very good at doing that, studying his opponents and exploiting their weaknesses. And I definitely struggled in that dare. I think you could tell that when I was actually swapping with him. There were a couple times where we'd go a lap or 2 without swapping because I would have a bad corner. And yeah, so he probably took note of that. But throughout that run, I just wanted to keep Rick in that lead. I wanted to keep him running out that fuel, making sure he couldn't save any. And I don't know if he knew that he was short and he was just hoping for a yellow, or if he didn't know until the very end there. But I knew ever since that first green flag pit stop, I started doing numbers. I'm like, okay, if this goes green, him and Henry aren't looking too good. And I mean, props to my teammate Henry. He just sat back there in fourth the whole time and somehow made it to the end. Saved, what is that? Almost 5 laps he saved to get P3. So that was really impressive. He was one of those guys that stayed out on that one and only caution. So yeah, I didn't expect Henry to make it. So that's pretty cool to get 2 factory back cars in the podium.
All right, so Nick, a couple of weeks ago at Homestead, Miami, I did some predicting in terms of how many laps the race leader. I'm doing this, guy. I'm gonna find out.
Oh no!
In terms of how many laps the race winner was going to end up leading, and I ended up guessing that correctly. Next week it's Worldwide Technology Race League. I'm gonna spin some conspiracies now because back in season 2, you took the checkered flag at Worldwide Technology. Went on to win the championship. Last season, Maleska took the checkered flag at that short track. He went on to win the championship. So what do you think of the chances that whoever takes the checkered flag next week is going to win the championship at the end of the season?
Well, I mean, you just laid it out. I mean, it's 100% so far. So I guess whoever wins Gateway
I told him
winning the championship. Might as well give him the trophy.
I told him to put this away. No, he spooked me a couple weeks ago and said, oh yeah, whoever leads 58 laps will win this race. He got it bang on. That was creepy. So if he gets this one right, I am literally going to be paying Seth to predict all of my races in the future, and then I'll be like showing up and be like, sweet, I'm getting P3. I'm happy with that.
Now you just put pressure on me. Now I feel like I got to go win that race next week.
Oh, we were talking about this as well. There's no like. No, don't do it. There's no pressure.
Superstition, Scott. Well.
Seth, you ruined me! What have you done? You madman, Seth!
I've ruined your reputation. I'm so sorry.
FRN is now looking for a new lead commentator. If anyone could please reach out to me and tell me if they like commentating. I need a replacement for Seth. My Seth is broken.
There you go. I'll bring up the joint. Want to join FRN lower third there for you. There you go. I got your segue. You're covered.
Oh man, Nick, you guys are having way too much fun up here.
But yeah, like, you guys put on a great race, and we're just, like, up here like, yeah, there's a great race happening. But also, milkshakes.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Nick, congratulations, though, on a great performance here tonight. As mentioned, a lot of the guys that you're up around there in the point stands finishing up there as well. So we're going to be very interested to see how the points shake out heading next week as well. But nonetheless, great performance for you here this evening. Another top 5 run, and maybe even the points leader heading to next week. We'll have to wait and see. But let's turn the microphone over to you now for some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, as always, Factory Back Motorsports, motorsport.com. By the way, you should check that site because we got some interesting news tonight. We're revolving around real-life IndyCar, I understand, so should be interesting. Go check out the site to read that. CoveyMoore.com. Great rodeo photographer right there, and great team owner too. Unfortunate what happened to him tonight. He had a nice solid top 10 going, and all these other sponsors. Can't remember them all right now because it was one hell of a race. My head spinning, but yeah, they all know I'm thankful.
Well, Nick DeGroot here tonight picks up his 6th top 5 and 8th top 10 on the season. Congratulations once again, Nick, and best of luck into next week, a track that you've taken a checker flag at Worldwide Technology.
Yep, looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Let's go down to victory lane. Let's talk with tonight's 4-time winner this season, Robert Maleska III. Hey, Robert, Scott, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you guys.
All right, so I asked Scott this question at the top of the program. We saw that you took the checkered flag in the season opener at Michigan. 20 laps extra here tonight at the sister track, but was there anything from the daytime race in the season opener that you were able to apply here tonight, or was it entirely different, especially with the fact that we had that extremely long green flag run from pretty much the start of this race?
The only thing I really took from Michigan is kind of being able to fuel save and, where lift points are going into the turns. Because, getting, Nick and I pit, 6 laps in on that only yellow, which really set us up for success and not having to save to the end.
phenomenal race out there though tonight. I don't know. I mean, we were watching Rick Ravon, trying to fuel manage. Obviously, he was off cycle and whatnot. But at the same time, you can't just sit down and say, I've got to let this happen. I've got to chill out here. You had to make some moves to attach to the lead pack. Then you were patient up until the last couple of laps. You waited for Ravon to pit, and at the whole time you were just sitting there and watching De Groot. You were so good at reading drivers. Tell us what goes through your mind when you're sitting there and trying to plan how you're going to win this race.
Yeah, I guess firstly with Rick, I knew once with that first green flag pit stop, I knew once he was still pushing there, I knew he couldn't make it. So only Henry had a shot. So but yeah, into reading, I kind of just go by feel, go by tendencies. Especially if you notice, when Rick and Nick were flopping or doing the draft there, Rick would go super wide and kind of cut low. So I knew just if I could get a little lower on exit, I'd be completely fine. And then once Rick pit, Nick didn't run the very bottom. I noticed he was probably about, I don't know, 3.5 feet up. So if I can just get a little air down there, I would have a lot of success, which I did, and was able to kind of structure there at the end.
Obviously, with the long green flag racing we saw here tonight, gave me plenty of opportunities to kind of twist Scott's brain into a pretzel. And one little tidbit that I came up with, and I want to run this by you, is we're going into a track next week. You went to victory lane in one of your 10 victories last season, Worldwide Technology Raceway, en route to the championship. The guy we just talked to moments ago, Nick DeGroot, back in Season 2, won that race, and he ended up winning the championship. So what's your thoughts on the fact that maybe Worldwide Technology Raceway carries so much momentum for a driver that if somebody goes to victory lane next week, they've got the championship locked up?
Just before you answer that, Robert, I disown Seth. His crystal ball is not an FRN property. He's bringing witchery into our broadcast, and I want it to stop.
Third-party content.
Yeah, but yeah, Gateway's a unique track. It's weird. It's it seems like it's a short track, but it has that big track feel. So usually, if you can have success at Gateway, you'll have success at every oval on the schedule. But I think last year Gateway was a pretty packy race. The draft seemed very strong, and maybe getting lucky with yellows and managing fuel might come into play there.
Well, Robert, congratulations on your victory here tonight. Congratulations on sweeping the 2-mile tracks here this season. Of course, winning at Michigan earlier on this year as well. And looking forward to seeing if you're going to be able to keep this momentum up down the home stretch now as we enter into the second half of this season. Of course, heading to a track, as mentioned, you're very familiar with next week. We're now going to turn the mic over to you now, though, for some Victory Lane thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
Yeah, thanks to my teammates for kind of working with me there, excuse me. And yeah, I'll see if I can go 2 for 2 today and get a win in Lionheart Indy Series.
Well, Maleska burns it down here tonight at the Auto Club Speedway, picking up win number 4 on the season. Congratulations, Robert. Looking forward to seeing where this 4th victory puts you in the points heading into Worldwide Technologies Raceway next week.
Yep, thanks, boys. Have a good one.
And I just want to put out a disclaimer there, Scott. This is a conspiracy that I'm spinning. This is not a prediction, so no crystal ball involved, just stats.
Yeah, no, the crystal ball needs to stop. Seth, no, put the ball down. Seth, put the crystal ball down. We don't use those here. We use statistics, numbers, and evaluations, and I hate it when you're right.
Well, nonetheless, as we mentioned, looking forward to next week, seeing what Worldwide Technology brings to the table. As you mentioned, New Hampshire was the shortest track that these drivers have taken to so far, and Gateway a little bit smaller than that. So, obviously we see that these cars are very good in terms of the racing when we're at the wider racetracks, the high-speed racetracks. But, man, it gets down to technical for these guys when they're all wadded up together at the short tracks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, short track, technical? Yeah, I think you're making an understatement if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, Seth. So, look, I mean, It's difficult. It is definitely very, very, very difficult for these guys to manage their races there, and that's the long and short of it. They've got to sit down. They've got to manage their races the best as they possibly can. And right now, the way that I see it unfolding, I really don't think that they're going to get the opportunity to use the drafting. I think they're going to use their heads very, very early on. We saw that the most cautions that we've seen so far this evening did actually happen at New Hampshire. And it was a lot of drivers looking to be aggressive and buy some track position very early on in the race when they didn't necessarily need to. So look, I mean, my instincts are telling me that we're going to have another caution-filled race next week, and I don't see another way out of it, if I'm being perfectly honest.
We're going to have to wait and see. One thing we don't have to wait and see is what the point stands are like heading next week. The points actually
been
calculated,
updated, yeah.
and we actually have them here. Rick Ravon barely hangs on to that points lead heading into next week. 6 points over Nick DeGroot. Malescar, race winner, jumps up a spot to third, 21 points out. Bennett drops a spot to fourth, 32 points out. Matt White and Bronson Stafford maintain fifth and sixth, 62 points. Going to be separating those top 6 heading into next week. So the points actually get closer heading into a track where the competition is going to be closer as well. That's going to be a lot of fun. Hope you guys will join us next Wednesday night when we bring you coverage of the Dark Horse Racing Series presented by Troy Lee Designs at the Worldwide Technology Raceway. Green flag will be scheduled to fly at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Scott's been a great one here tonight, though. Under the lights on the West Coast here at Auto Club. Appreciate you joining me in the booth.
Hey man, a bunch of fun. Had an absolute blast. I tell you what, I'm looking forward to our next broadcast that we're doing together, which is the FTF Grand National Series this weekend at a track much closer to me than you guys.
Absolutely. I'm going to school here because we're going to his territory at Bathurst, and that's going to be on Saturday night. So I hope you guys join us for that as well. We got Backfire Sim Racing Cup Series. That's going to be on Friday night as well. We got an action-packed weekend coming up here on the Flatout Racing Network. But for Scott Rankin, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night, folks, as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.